Christ in the Eucharist. Vinnier research found that 69% of Mass-attending Catholics believe in the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist.
The Eucharist is calling us to do, and that is to be a sacrament of unity, to bring everyone in the Church.
Christ is truly present in the Holy Eucharist. Whereas the Catholic Church teaches Christ is truly, really, and substantially present in the Eucharist.
Right now, something sacred is quietly calling out, not with noise, not with pressure, but with a soft insistence that touches the heart. It's an invitation, one that's reaching believers across the world, gently urging them to remember, to return, to rediscover the depth and beauty of the Eucharist.
Of the Spirit in the Christian community, in the life of the community, in the Eucharist, and in prayer.
Once, this holy moment stood at the very center of our spiritual lives. It shaped our weeks, marked our days, and brought heaven into reach in ways too deep for words. But somewhere, we began to forget. Not all at once, not intentionally, but little by little, the reverence faded. Today, we often come to the altar with hurried steps and distracted thoughts. Our minds wander, our hearts race with outside noise.
The parish felt great sadness to, quote, see the Eucharistic body of the Lord Jesus treated in this deplorable way. He has now instituted several days of prayer.
And we move through the motions as though we're checking a box, failing to pause, to breathe, to realize that we are standing in the presence of something divine. Have you felt that loss? Not just as a thought, but as a stirring deep in your soul? That maybe, somewhere along the way, we traded awe for efficiency. That the sacred became familiar. That what once made us tremble now barely makes us pause. You're not imagining it. You're not alone. This quiet ache is shared by many. Across the globe, people are beginning to sense that we've drifted. Gradually, yes, but meaningfully, from the holy reverence this moment once carried.
Earlier this week, the Holy Synod, which is the body that runs the Church of Greece.
And the call now is simple but urgent. It's time to return. But that return won't come through noise. It won't be found in spectacle or performance. It begins instead in the humble moments, in the posture of our hearts and the stillness of our presence. It starts when we notice the little things, the way we walk into a church, the silence before Mass begins, the way we bow, kneel, and extend our hands to receive. These gestures, once alive with meaning, are often brushed aside in the name of convenience or comfort. But each small act was always meant to remind us we are standing before Christ Himself. And when we forget that, when we stop honoring that truth with our whole selves, we begin to forget who we're really here for. This isn't about nostalgia. It's not about going backward or recreating the past. It's about remembering what was never meant to be lost, the sense of mystery, the awareness of presence, the deep understanding that this isn't a symbol or a memory. It's a meeting between heaven and earth, wrapped in simplicity, a sacred reality hidden beneath the appearance of bread and wine.
The Eucharist is not simply a sign or a symbol. It is Jesus really, truly, and substantially present under the Eucharistic signs of bread and wine.
If you feel that something sacred has slipped through the cracks of modern life, stay with us. Because what comes next could stir your heart in ways you didn't expect. It could reawaken a love that's still there, waiting just beneath the surface. The Eucharist was never meant to be reduced to routine. It was never meant to blend into our schedules like any other task. It is, and always has been, a holy moment, an encounter with Christ Himself. The same Christ who walked with fishermen, touched lepers, forgave sinners, and climbed Calvary for love of us. That Christ is present here, right now, in every Mass, every time the priest speaks the sacred words, every time bread is broken and wine is poured. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but truly, deeply, fully present. For centuries, this truth was embraced with awe. Saints lived and died with this belief burning in their hearts. Priests carried the Eucharist with trembling hands, knowing they were holding the divine. And the faithful received it with tears of joy, knowing they were touching eternity. According to recent studies, a staggering truth has come to light. Nearly 7 out of 10 Catholics no longer believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. Let that sink in for a moment. The very heart of Catholic worship, the living body and blood of Jesus, has, for the majority, been reduced to a mere symbol. Not a sacrament, not a divine reality, just a reminder. This isn't just a theological footnote, it's a wake-up call. What we're witnessing isn't merely a drop in understanding, it's a case of spiritual amnesia. We've forgotten something essential, something sacred that has shaped the Church for over 2 millennia. The question presses in, how did we get here? Some will say it's a failure of catechesis. Others blame a culture that values speed over stillness, convenience over contemplation. And maybe they're right. But deeper than any of that lies a quiet erosion of awe, a numbness that creeps in when we become too used to the extraordinary, when the sacred starts to feel routine. Think about it. Gestures that once pulsed with meaning, genuflecting before the tabernacle, receiving the Eucharist with reverent hands, kneeling in silent adoration, have slowly faded in many places. They haven't been lost out of defiance, but out of forgetfulness. We've forgotten why they matter. And in that forgetfulness, something holy has started to slip through our fingers. We stop pausing before the divine. We no longer tremble in his presence. The moment that should still us and set our hearts on fire begins to blend into the background, and what was once a miracle becomes a motion, a ritual we move through rather than a mystery we encounter. But this is not a call to assign blame. It's a call to wake up, to look inward, to ask ourselves the hard but holy question: have I too grown casual with the sacred? Because maybe in trying to make faith more accessible or less intimidating, we unintentionally let go of the very reverence that made it powerful. Maybe silence, kneeling, and awe weren't just old-fashioned customs. Maybe they were anchors, holding our hearts steady in the presence of God. This moment isn't about correcting others. It's about renewing ourselves. It's about letting reverence return, not as an obligation, but as a response to love. The kind of love that sees Christ in the Eucharist and receives him not with indifference but with devotion, with a heart that is burning, with hands that tremble not in fear but in holy awe. So pause, take a breath, let this truth hit your heart. When we approach the Eucharist without preparing our souls, without interior stillness, without humility, something precious begins to fade. It's not just about breaking with tradition, it's about missing the point entirely. Imagine receiving an invitation to a royal feast. The table is set with care, the food prepared with honor, the atmosphere charged with dignity. But you walk in with no thought, no preparation, acting as though you've come for a quick bite at a casual gathering. The meal hasn't changed, but your heart has. And that changes everything. So it is with the Eucharist. Christ remains fully, really, and truly present. His offering is unchanging. But our hearts, if unprepared, if unaware, might miss the miracle that unfolds right before us. The way we approach that altar, the way we walk, bow, receive, speaks louder than any homily. It tells the truth of our inner world. It reveals whether we still grasp the reality of who waits for us in that sacred host. And this isn't about show. It's not about outward actions for the sake of appearances. It's about letting our outer reverence reflect an inner reality, that we know, believe, and love the one who gives himself to us in this moment. This is more than tradition. This is the very heartbeat of our faith. The Eucharist is not a metaphor, not a symbol, not a mere echo of the past. It is Christ himself, alive, near, and offering himself to each of us in the most personal way possible. To forget this, to receive him without reverence, without preparation, without awe, is more than a small oversight. It's a fracture in our relationship with the one who is the source of our hope, our strength, our salvation. There is still every reason to hope. There always has been. The journey back to reverence hasn't vanished. It's simply waiting for us to return. The moment we begin to rediscover the sacredness of the Eucharist, when our hearts are stirred again by awe and love, something profound begins to happen. We are changed, and in being changed, we draw others not with words, but by the quiet radiance of a life centered on Christ. What we're being called to isn't a longing for the past, but a return to something eternal, a truth that has always remained at the Church's core.
A stronger community. Our core values help us find who we're compatible with, who we're complementary with, who completes us. It's always a mutual.
At the center still burns the same mystery, Christ in the Eucharist, present and waiting to pour out grace beyond what we can comprehend. This isn't just ceremony. It's not a gesture meant to remind us of a long-ago story. It's the meeting point of heaven and earth, the very moment where time stands still and the divine enters bread and wine to dwell among us. Yet we must be honest. In our age, this sacred moment is quietly fading, not because of outside opposition, but through a slow forgetting from within, a loss of meaning, a dulling of reverence. The challenge is not about preserving traditions for their own sake. It's about holding fast to the eternal truth that has nourished the Church for more than 2,000 years. The gestures, the silence, the disposition of our hearts. These were never about outward form, they were expressions meant to protect something holy, to keep us anchored in the sacred. Imagine this, a believer walking toward the altar, head bowed, hands folded, each step intentional and quiet. They know, deeply know, that they are about to meet the living God. That image once captured the heart of Catholic worship. It revealed what it meant to draw near to Christ with awe and surrender. But today, in many places, that scene is fading. The walk to communion has become brisk, casual, even thoughtless. The expressions of awe are dimming. What once stirred the soul now risks being reduced to routine. Some say this shift is needed, a way to meet modern people where they are. But others worry that something irreplaceable is being lost, a gradual drifting from the sacred, a thinning of the space between the human and the divine. Perhaps both perspectives carry a sliver of truth. Yes, faith should be accessible, but never at the expense of its holiness. Because when the mystery is stripped away, the heart of the encounter is at risk of being lost. This isn't about personal taste or liturgical preferences. It's about protecting what is most vital in worship. The Eucharist is not ordinary bread. It never was. It is the body and blood of the one who died for love of us. And when we come forward to receive him, it should be with our whole hearts, not half aware, not distracted, but filled with trembling gratitude for the gift before us. This sacred moment deserves more than routine. It calls for our presence, our love, our reverence. Because in the Eucharist, we don't remember Christ as a figure of history. We encounter him. In the here and now, he comes not to be admired from a distance, but to be received, to live within us, to transform us from the inside out. Now imagine offering someone the greatest gift they could ever receive, not wrapped in fine packaging, but born of sacrifice, of love in its purest form. Then imagine that gift being taken for granted, not with ill will, but with quiet indifference. That ache, that sorrow, mirrors the danger we face when the Eucharist becomes ordinary in our eyes. But this is not a call to despair. It's a call to rediscover, to recover not just a practice, but a relationship, a living bond that has always been at the center of our faith. The answer is not to rewind time out of sentiment, but to embrace what is timeless, to realize that what appears old is in fact eternal. Reverence for the Eucharist is not outdated tradition trying to stay relevant. It is the heartbeat of our identity as Catholics. To rekindle that reverence is to protect what is sacred, not only for ourselves, but for every soul that will walk through the Church's doors in the years to come. The Eucharist is not just another thing on our schedule. It is the encounter that changes everything. Christ gives himself to us freely and completely, not symbolically, but truly. This isn't just an old practice. It is a treasure passed from the mouth of Jesus at the Last Supper to the hands of his church, when he said, "This is my body, this is my blood." He wasn't speaking figuratively. He was offering himself, poured out in the greatest act of love the world has ever known. And those words continue to echo through every age, through every Mass, even now. To truly grasp their meaning is to step into the mystery woven through Scripture, safeguarded by the early Church and illuminated by the saints, men and women who wept before the tabernacle, who fasted with longing, who walked through suffering and darkness with courage, because they knew they were not alone. Christ was with them, not just in spirit, but in sacrament. Close your eyes and imagine being in the upper room with Jesus and his apostles during the Last Supper. Feel the sacred silence, the awe in the air as Christ breaks the bread and lifts the cup. That moment wasn't just a memory. It became a living, eternal reality passed through generations in the form of the Eucharist. It marked not just a meal, but a covenant, a profound union between heaven and earth. The early Christians recognized this truth deeply. Even without grand churches or ornate altars, they risked persecution to gather in secret and receive the Eucharist. Their faith wasn't in empty rituals, but in a living encounter with Christ. This holy mystery became the foundation of the Church, not just in structure, but in spirit. Saints and church fathers like Augustine and Cyril of Jerusalem wrote not from theory but from first-hand reverence, declaring with certainty that the Eucharist is not a symbol, it is Christ himself. As the Church grew across time and cultures, traditions formed to express the sacredness of the Eucharist, incense rising like prayers, solemn silence, and kneeling in adoration. These weren't just customs. They were signs of reverence, a sacred language developed to protect and honor the miracle of Christ's presence. But as history advanced, challenges emerged. Modern distractions, cultural changes, and even theological confusion sometimes dulled this reverence. What once was approached with awe gradually became routine for some. The way we receive the Eucharist, whether on the tongue or in the hand, became a topic of debate, not just about preference, but about belief and the expression of faith through physical gestures. Kneeling and receiving on the tongue, long held as a sign of humility and awe, was not enforced, but naturally adopted out of devotion. Later, following the Second Vatican Council, receiving in the hand was introduced as an option. For many, it fostered a deeper personal engagement. But for others, it raised concerns that the sacredness of the Eucharist was being diminished, especially when accompanied by a lack of catechesis, silence, or preparation. The core issue isn't the method of reception itself, but what it reveals about our hearts. Our posture, silence, and gestures reflect and shape our understanding of Christ's real presence. When reverence fades, so can faith. This unease deepened during the global health crisis, when churches quickly changed practices to meet safety protocols, removing communion rails, mandating hand reception, and reducing physical contact. While understandable, these swift changes led many to feel that sacred traditions had been set aside too easily, with little reflection on their spiritual meaning. Ultimately, the Church's conversation about Eucharistic reverence isn't about enforcing uniformity, but about renewing faith. It asks each of us, do our actions reflect the truth we proclaim, that Christ is fully present in the Eucharist? Because at the heart of every Mass is not a symbol, but a miracle. The passage is a heartfelt reflection on the importance of reverence when receiving the Eucharist. It emphasizes that the gestures we make, every bow, kneel, and still step, are not just outward actions, but visible expressions of deep inner belief. These movements are not about formality or tradition for tradition's sake. They are acts of worship, declaring silently that what we receive is not just bread, It is Christ himself. The text invites believers to enter the moment of communion not out of routine, but as a sacred response to a divine invitation. It reminds us that this moment unites heaven and earth, and that every detail matters: how we walk, how we prepare, how we receive. These are all reflections of our spiritual posture and belief in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. It warns against allowing habit or distraction to erode this reverence. Without intentional awareness, the sacred can become ordinary. But when we approach the Eucharist with awe and humility, our gestures become sacred themselves, turning into silent testimonies of faith. Whether we receive on the tongue or in the hand, it's not the method that matters most. It's the heart behind it. The passage also points to the communal aspect of the Eucharist. Our actions affect not only our personal spiritual life, but also shape the culture of faith around us. When we receive with devotion, we witness to others, especially younger generations, that this is something holy. If reverence is lost today, belief may fade tomorrow. In a world filled with noise, change, and distraction, the Eucharist offers a return to what is eternal and unchanging. It is not a symbol or a mere ritual. It is a living presence, a transforming grace, and a summons to live differently. The author urges us to rekindle the fire of faith, to let this sacred encounter change us, and to become vessels of that grace in our daily lives. Ultimately, this is a call to live the Mass, not just attend it. The Eucharist should echo in how we treat others, how we speak, forgive, and love. It's not confined to the sanctuary, but meant to shape how we live, reflecting Christ in the world. Reverence isn't taught through lectures, it's passed on through love and example. A child who sees their parent kneeling quietly in prayer doesn't just learn a rule, they learn awe. When families enter the church with silence and intention, they say, without words, God is here. This is how reverence begins, not in explanation, but in experience. And yet, reverence is not only personal. The Eucharist unites us not just to Christ, but to one another. Division and debate, especially over matters of liturgy, can distract us from the deeper call, humility before the mystery. When we argue about what is allowed, we risk losing sight of what is worthy. The altar is not a place for pride or preference. It is where heaven meets earth. What we believe is revealed in how we act. If we truly believe that the Eucharist is Jesus, not a symbol, not a ritual, but the living Christ, then everything about our approach should show it. Our posture, our silence, our gaze, even our dress should reflect that we are not in an ordinary moment. We are at the foot of the cross, receiving the Lamb of God. Still, how often do we go through the motions? How often do we approach distracted, unchanged? The Eucharist is not meant to be watched. It's meant to transform us. Every communion is an invitation to deeper healing, deeper union, and a deeper fire of love. The saints understood this. They didn't just speak of reverence, they lived it. St. Clare defended her convent with the Blessed Sacrament alone. St. Tarcisius died protecting the Eucharist. Padre Pio offered Mass with tears in his eyes, fully consumed by the mystery. Their witness challenges us. Do we recognize who is before us? Even modern Eucharistic miracles echo this truth. In Lanciano and Buenos Aires, consecrated hosts turned into living heart tissue. Science confirmed what faith already knew. Jesus is truly present. But these signs aren't necessary to believe. Every Mass is a miracle. Every tabernacle holds Emmanuel, God with us. So the question isn't, where is Christ? It's, how do we respond? Absolutely. Here's a 500-word reflective rewrite of the final part, preserving the tone and essence while making it more concise and structured. Reverence is not about rules, it's about love. And perhaps we've lost touch with that, not because we stopped believing, but because we stopped truly looking. Yet Christ does not scold us for forgetting. He waits. He waits for hearts ready to remember. So how do we respond in today's fast, noisy world? It begins quietly, with a bowed head, a pause before Mass, a moment of prayer from longing, not obligation. It's teaching our children not just how to cross themselves, but why. It's remembering that when we enter a church, we step onto holy ground. The Eucharist is not just a part of our worship, it is the heart of it. And in every consecrated host, Jesus is truly present, not symbolically, not metaphorically, but wholly, really. This truth should stir something in us: awe, wonder, and joy. Not fleeting joy, but the deep kind that sustained saints and martyrs through their darkest moments. The joy that transformed St. Clare, St. Tarcisius, and St. Francis, because they knew without doubt that Christ was near. We live in a time where belief in the real presence has faded, but renewal won't come through data or clever campaigns. It will come through witnesses, souls who kneel with love, who receive the Eucharist with reverence, and whose lives reflect the miracle they believe in. It will begin with one person, one family, one parish, choosing to return, heart, mind, and body, to the altar of God. This is a call to live differently, to let our gestures become prayers, to let every genuflection, every moment of silence, speak of our faith, to turn our homes into little sanctuaries where prayer flows naturally and reverence is lived daily. And when we go to Mass, let us arrive not just early in body, but prepared in spirit. Let us approach the Eucharist as if we were standing before the burning bush with barefoot soles and open eyes. Because in every Mass, heaven touches earth, and Christ does not come just to visit, he comes to stay. The Eucharist calls us not just to receive, but to become. It is not a moment, it is a mission. When we rise from the pew after communion, let us not leave unchanged. Let us carry Christ within us, into our homes, our workplaces, our friendships. Let our reverence be contagious. Let our faith be visible. Let our lives proclaim, not with words alone, but with every step: this is Jesus, truly present, truly given, truly adored. And may the world, through us, remember what it has forgotten: that the Eucharist is not just a beautiful tradition, it is Jesus, alive, here, and waiting. Please like the video and subscribe the channel to get more useful content.